And this, of course, comes after weeks of viral videos from a young man YouTuber who was literally creeping around daycares by himself, making claims about fraud that were not there. And then the vice president and the FBI director were retweeting these videos without even verifying if they were true. So we're not accusing people of being xenophobic and racist. They are being xenophobic and racist, including the President of the United States. And I want to say, for one, that I stand with the Somali and the immigrant community standing here today.
Well, we just had one of my Democrat colleagues said these are just opinions. You know, are these guys donating money back to Democrats?
Yes, they are.
I'd like to enter into the record, Mr. Chairman, an article from Breitbart News saying, with the title being Database Searches Show Somali Fraudsters Funding Democrat Politicians. So these aren't opinions.
Without objection.
There's actually reporting on this. Then are you just hearing from Republicans on this, or are Democrat constituents like, oh my God, I'm struggling to put my kids in school, struggling to make ends meet, and my tax dollars are being robbed by people, and then they're sending it all over the place, and this is complete fraud. What is going on, and why hasn't anything been done about it?
I'll give you a personal example. So my family, my in-laws in particular, are politically diverse. A lot of them vote for Democrats, and they're fairly apolitical. They're not like me, all plugged in. And so I kind of use them as a bellwether for what the people are thinking. Across the board, everybody is upset about this fraud.
And I'm guessing when you guys bring this up, whether it's to the Waltz administration, whether it's to the AG, the number one thing that comes back at you is you're a racist, you're a white supremacist, or you're an Islamophobe. As we've seen Governor Waltz now trying to answer for these questions, he's doing it at the national level. Do you guys hear the same thing at the state level as well?
Yes, absolutely. They always pivot to the divisive. As I stated in my opening statement, it's diversion, right? We're going to talk about personalities. We're going to talk about partisan politics. We're going to find some way to get people yelling at each other rather than looking at the problem.
Or, like you've heard my colleagues do on this panel, it's Donald Trump, baby.
Yep.
It's all about Donald Trump, right? The old pivot. We're not going to talk about what's going on in Somalia and not going to talk about what's going on in Minnesota with this massive fraud scandal. We're going to talk about Donald Trump. With my remaining seconds, can we play the video I have, Mr. Chairman?
horta aad iyo aadaan ugu faraxsanahay in maanta safaari aan soo gaarnay sida dadka badan ay u og yihiin ciyaalkeena yaryar ilaa iyo number la eg 20 milyan oo ciyaal iskuuley ah waxay cuntadooda ka helaan iskoolka kaliyo marka waxaan fursad u helnay in aan sharci soo gudbino oo la dhahayo Meals Act oo u fududeynayo in waqtigaanay pandemic aan ku jirno oo dhalinyarada iskoolka aynan joogin oo guryahooda ay joogaan aynan gaajoonin oo familkoodi wili ay fursad u helaan in cunto ay helaan oo meelo qaarkood laga qaybinayo ay cuntada ka soo qaadan karaan marka aadaan ugu mahad celinaya safari in ay tahay meelaha sayti oo diyaarinayo cunto maalin kasto dhalinyarada ciyaalkii iyo familkoodina ku taakuleynaayo cuntada sayti maalintii kaliyo safari waxay ay cunto siisaa 2300 oo ciyaal ah iyo familkooda taas waa mid muhiim ah sida aad u ogtihiin dhalinyaro badan gaajo ku nool wadankaanayti ama familkooda fursad u helin in quraac qada iyo casho ay siiso marka in qadadaasaytii ay meel ka helaan aaday u muhiimsan tahay bishaan ramadaanka oo familiyaalkeena badan iyagoo aan shaqo haysanin iyagoo aan taakulayn kaleeta helaynin in aynan ka walwalin ciyaalkooda yaryar sidii ay qada ku siin lahaayeen waa muhiim marka waxaan u mahad celinayaa safari oo kaleeta iyo dadka badan oo maalin ilaahay keeno fursad u qaata in ay u volunteer gareeyaan oo ay taakuleeyaan familiyaalka.
One thing that is so alarming is the reporting that many of these fraudulent companies are then donating the stolen money back to the same Democrats that are protecting them and advocate for these very programs. Is that correct, Mr. Hudson?
I would agree with that statement.
Well, we just had one of my Democrat colleagues said these are just opinions. You know, are these guys donating money back to Democrats?
Yes, they are.
I'd like to enter into the record, Mr. Chairman, an article from Breitbart News saying, with the title being Database Searches Show Somali Fraudsters Funding Democrat Politicians. So these aren't opinions.
Without objection.
There's actually reporting on this. Are you guys aware? You guys are elected officials in Minnesota, right? Are you guys aware of the reporting that some of the stolen money is getting funneled back to the Islamic terror group Al-Shabaab in Somalia? Mr. Robbins?
Yes, sir. And we have evidence of it going back as far as 2012, where a man was convicted of sending $21,000 to Al-Shabaab. In 2011, 2 Minnesota women were convicted of sending money to different groups. Someone else, we have multiple references of how the Al-Shabaab takes a cut when the money gets to Somalia through the Hawala network. So I think there's ample evidence on this and federal convictions.
Yeah. That's outrageous.
What unfolded in this hearing was not a debate about immigration or charity. It was a direct confrontation over accountability, and public trust. Democratic members insisted that allegations tied to Somali-linked fraud networks were nothing more than xenophobia amplified by misinformation. They dismissed investigative footage from an independent YouTuber who examined daycare and food assistance programs, arguing the claims were unverified and irresponsibly promoted by national voices. But when Minnesota officials were pressed under questioning, the narrative shifted. They admitted that concerns about fraud are not limited to one political party. Testimony confirmed that frustration is coming from every direction: Republicans, Democrats, and families with no party affiliation at all. Taxpayers who are struggling with rising costs want to know why millions in public funds meant for children and food programs were allegedly diverted. Witnesses described a recurring pattern when the issue is raised with state leadership. The focus moves away from the financial misconduct and toward attacking the motives of those asking questions. Critics are branded racist, Islamophobic, or politically driven, effectively shutting down deeper scrutiny. Representative Crane then introduced video evidence into the congressional record connected to the 10 million meals pandemic program established during COVID lockdowns. The footage outlined how shell entities allegedly took advantage of emergency funding mechanisms that lacked strong oversight. More striking was testimony confirming that individuals linked to these fraudulent operations made donations to Democratic political campaigns. When directly asked whether stolen funds were redirected into political channels, Minnesota officials answered yes. Crane also referenced reporting that portions of the misused funds were transferred overseas through informal money systems. Some of those cases have already resulted in federal convictions. Witnesses cited documented examples spanning more than a decade, including funds routed through the Hawala network with confirmed prosecutions involving Al-Shabaab connections, despite court records, campaign finance data, and investigative journalism being entered into the official records. Several Democratic members continued to frame the allegations as opinion rather than documented fact. The core issue highlighted in the hearing was oversight. Emergency relief programs rolled out during the pandemic operated with minimal safeguards, and according to testimony, certain political actors financially benefited, while criticism was deflected through accusations of bigotry. The pattern described was clear: deflection replaces investigation, character attacks replace structural reform. Meanwhile, taxpayers remain responsible for systems that repeatedly fail basic accountability standards. This story is not disappearing as more documentation surfaces and additional officials testify under oath. The question of financial responsibility and political accountability will only intensify heading into the next election cycle. If you want continued coverage of hearings like this and direct access to the source material, subscribe and share this with someone who still believes this is simply partisan noise.